If you are still not convinced of the power of using freshly milled wheat and the difference that it can make in your lives, then stay tuned because this is an amazing interview that you will not want to miss. Hey everyone, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, we talk all the things real whole grains. So this video is completely different. It's actually an interview with a special friend of mine that I've met through Instagram. Her name is Michal, and she is an amazing person. And what drew me to her is seeing her talk about on Instagram how she cured her autoimmune disease by switching from a completely gluten-free lifestyle that she had been on for over a decade to consuming freshly milled wheat, which was quite the leap of faith. She is a Texan, married to a cotton farmer, and is also a part-time homeschooling mama. As you will hear in this interview, she's actually overcome many health challenges, and even though she was doing all the right things, it really was freshly milled grains that was the missing piece she was looking for that allowed her to quickly heal from her autoimmune disease of lupus. So while she believed the dogma that grains were the source of all evil for about a decade, she has turned that ship around and is now passionately sharing her love for real whole grains. She now spends her time developing nutritious recipes using those wonderful grains that are nutritious and that your whole family will certainly love. Now, do know this is not the full interview. This is just a clip of this interview. The full interview is for my members only in my exclusive Grains and Grit members group. And with our membership, for just $5 a month for now, you have access to a private podcast, weekly recipe emails, and a private group on MeWe where you have access to me as well. So if you're interested, it's just $5 a month. All details will be down below. And so this full interview, for those of you that are members, that is for you. But otherwise, this video is just the highlights of this interview. The full interview was almost an hour long, and we just had a really great time talking. Be sure to stay tuned at the end of this interview for a promo code that Michal has so graciously given to all of y'all. So let's get on with the interview. Okay, so first of all, I forgot to ask, how do we pronounce your name?
It is Michal Grappe.
Okay, Michal Grappe. I did have it right. I was thinking that, but I just wanted to make sure. Well, welcome, Michal. So happy. I'm super excited to be interviewing you today. Like I had mentioned in our pre-talk, I discovered you on Instagram several months ago, and I've been wanting to interview you this entire time because I think what drew me to you was you were talking about your story. I think it was I think you had mentioned how freshly milled grains had helped you cure your autoimmune disease, which I think at that time you'd only mentioned lupus in that reel. And so I was very intrigued. And how you came from a diehard anti-grain, gluten-free type stance, and then you were completely converted over to the dark side, to us grainies over here. Okay, so let's start with that. So why did you start milling after being gluten-free for over, you said, I think almost a decade?
Yeah. So I had, coming from the past, so for probably, a decade, I had avoided grains and mostly gluten-free. The exceptions were sourdough periodically and sprouted grains periodically, but I was mostly vegetables and got my carbs from potatoes and things like that, which were great. Nothing bad against that. But I had just started not feeling very well, and it was kind of on the heels of 2 viral infections, and my mom is in medicine, and so I was able just to call her, and she ran a bunch of labs, and lo and behold, it came back that I was positive for lupus. And I felt really stuck um, in what the next steps were because I ate really clean. I took care of my body. I exercised. Tend to my
Mhm.
emotional world because that
You were
can
you were
sometimes
doing
cause.
all the right things that they say to do.
Yes. And
Hmm.
so, I was kind of thought I was bulletproof, and
Hmm.
landed with this diagnosis. And my mother was actually diagnosed at the same age that I was, whenever way back in the day. And so she had managed it her whole life without medicine. And so she just kind of told me, let's just see if you can change something and then we'll retest you and then come back to this. Um, so because I felt stuck, um, I honestly
Yeah.
just prayed. I was like, Lord, like, show me what to do because I do not know what I feel like I do everything right. Like, I don't know where to go from here. I obviously don't want to live with this. And basically, it was, like whenever something just something keeps coming around in your circle, like over and over,
Hmm.
and like, okay, that's coincidental, like that's probably the Lord, like
Yeah.
not, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I randomly learned about fresh milled grains. I think it was, kind of how most people learn about it was through like Sue Becker and like one of her YouTube
Hmm.
videos or something. And it wasn't like I sought it out. It was just kind of a happenstance thing. Again, I'm
Yeah.
like, that was the
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
and I was like, that is something that is interesting, but I was open to it because I have a history of like doing therapeutic nutrition
Hmm.
for another autoimmune disease that we'll probably talk about later.
Okay.
Um, and so I kind of felt like, okay, we're just gonna try it. And I think at the time, all I had was my Vitamix because I was like, I'm not gonna jump in and like invest
Hmm.
all this money. Like, what if I feel terrible? And then what if I just had a lot of doubts? And
Yes.
so I was like, we're just gonna use what I have and we'll see. And so I used my Vitamix and froze the berries, did the things to prepare it so that I could get a kind of okay grind, like after having a meal, you're like, oh yeah, no, this is not the same.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But um so I did that and yeah, like I started noticing some things changing. My energy levels pretty quickly responded very well. And
Mhm.
I noticed like my hair getting thicker. I noticed that I was having more good days than bad days. Um, and then, yeah, I finally, it was like 9 months later. And I remember like the day that I had my lab, I went back, I was like, okay, I'm feeling like mostly good, like
Mhm.
probably have just a few bad days here and there, but like mostly good. And, at this point, still not taking any medicine or anything for the lupus. And reran my labs, and they were completely clear. So like my ANA was negative, the panel for lupus was negative. We actually saw some improvements in other areas. So I'm like, if I wish I had the lab sheet in front of me, I'd probably just read it to
Yeah.
you. But it kind of blew my mind. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, that's my story and like how why I did
Yeah.
it and how quickly my body responded. And I felt like that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. So this was just 9 months from when you were diagnosed with lupus to getting your labs
Mhm.
drawn again in 9 months. You basically
And
were, I mean, is this considered cured? I mean, based with your labs, is
yes,
that considered that you don't have it?
yes, yes, it is considered healed. Like usually people can go into remission with lupus, but their
Mhm.
labs will still stay positive. It'll still be on your lab work. But because you're not showing symptoms or you're not having flares or you could have like a low positive, or your ANA would stay positive even if the lupus was gone. And an ANA just measures the autoimmune process in your body. And so, from
Hmm.
what I understand, um, because my ANA was completely clear and negative, it was like there's no autoimmune, period. So
I get so excited when I hear these stories. How long ago was this that you were diagnosed with lupus and then a 9 months cure? I think you said it was 2 years ago this happened.
yeah, about 2 years
Okay.
ago, and yeah, I've not looked back since because
Yay!
yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, well, you did say something that kind of leads me to the next one that before this, you had, I
Mhm.
guess, healed yourself or was, what did you call it? Therapy, I guess, with food?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll touch on that. So, and this kind of goes into like my background a little bit, like why this was such a huge shift and not
Hmm.
my first rodeo.
Yeah.
Because in 2011, I was in like I was in a second state. I was getting a second degree, and
Hmm.
I had gotten, it's called Guillain-Barré syndrome,
Hmm.
and it's an autoimmune disease of your peripheral nervous system. I was in the hospital, and I was in physical therapy for 2.5 years, and I was in a wheelchair for almost a year. I'd gone as far as I could go inside of medicine. I was kind of like, I was young, but I thought there's something I could do at home, right? Because
Hmm.
there's got to be an answer that's supportive of my body as I go home and try to get better from this. And my doctors were so unhelpful. Well, just time and B vitamins. Like that's really what like my neurologist said, who I love and respect. So that was sort of my catapult into understanding how nutrition plays a huge role in your health. And I ended up doing, it's called the Walls Protocol. Um, and honestly, it's like an autoimmune paleo style of eating. And I did that for 7 years. And while that, it was very restricted. Um, what definitely got me out of that crisis, like pulled me out of the crisis that I was in, in hindsight, can look back and see how having that much restriction in my nutrition and feeling like, okay, I'm putting all these wonderful things in, um, maybe contributed to some deficiencies
Yeah.
because I wasn't eating grains. And I think looking back, I didn't know anything about it really,
Hmm.
other than that they were terrible. And inside the health community, there's this certain dogma around wheat. And
Yes.
so if you have autoimmune anything, you have to be gluten free. You cannot eat wheat. And I totally believed that. And that's how I lived for like really intense. I had to do like really intense therapeutic nutrition for like 7 years just to like, kind of get myself back on solid ground.
Hmm.
Um, but then I think that that kind of set me up for like another autoimmune situation
Yeah.
was growth.
Yeah. So it's very interesting how this has been a journey for you where you had one autoimmune disease and you went on the paleo, like gluten-free type diet, and that definitely helped you. But I think it's interesting for you how you then ended up with another autoimmune disease. Um, because, yeah, possibly when you are that restrictive for that long, because you said you were on it, I think 7 years,
7
that's a
years.
long period. And then possibly, yes, you might have become deficient in another area, causing another autoimmune disease. So it's definitely, you've been on a journey for sure. So, kind of to recap, so that was 2011 that you were diagnosed with Guillain-Barré, your first autoimmune disease, and then 7 years on the paleo, gluten free type lifestyle, diagnosed
Yeah.
with lupus.
Yeah.
And then 9 months, whenever, and then you started incorporating freshly milled wheat. That does lead us to the next question. So how did your family, first of all, how did they react when you started milling your grains, baking your wheat? Did they hate the bread? Did they like it? How did they react to it? And then have they seen any benefit with using freshly milled grains?
Okay, so at the time, I was using my Vitamix, which we know
Mm-hmm.
is very different from
Yeah.
from a
Yes.
milk. It works. It'll get you through. If you need to
Mm-hmm.
be convinced, it'll get you through, but it's not the same. Um, so at first they were like they actually still loved it. Again, they were eating primarily a lot of fruits and vegetables and meat, kind of the
Mm-hmm.
same style that we had, me and my husband had, been eating for all these years. And so when bread came back into their lives, they were like, "Ooh, this is
Yeah.
amazing."
Yay.
Yeah. So everybody loved it. But my son, I think he actually probably needed to acclimate a little bit more. So like, I would make a loaf and my daughter would just tear it up. She was like, "This is the best." Um, then my son, he'd eat like he'd kind of pick at it. He'd eat a little bit and be like, "Yeah, that's good. Um, I like it," but he didn't go crazy over it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really important to me that he did eat some because he had warts that were like really stubborn, and I was doing the oils, the homeopathy, like
Mm-hmm.
all the potions and lotions and things on it, and we just could not knock them. And so I was like, you know what, buddy, like just while we're all eating this, you like it, right? Just
Yeah.
take like a few bites every day, and then we'll just see if this helps you. Because there's all these testimonies about warts, and I thought,
Mm-hmm.
all right, we're gonna test it. Um, and yeah, like they totally resolved, and it was like relatively quickly. In the first few weeks, I mean, it was insane, and nothing I had worked
Wow.
on or used like had moved the needle at all. Um, and then my daughter, she had like probably from the time she was 2 to how old is she now? She's 7. So I started milling like she's probably around 5 ish, 4.5, 5. And she had had like a kind of a scaly scalp,
Mm-hmm.
like there's just, it's not like cradle cap, but
Yeah.
and it's not dandruff, but it's, what I don't know how to explain it. So I would treat it and wash it, do all the things. And it was just kind of always something she had. Um, After she started eating this bread, that completely cleared up, which blew my mind. We just kind of looked down one day and we're like, "Hey, your scalp like looks amazing. Like it's never that amazing."
Yeah.
Um, and then my husband had over the years he'd had a positive ANA a few times actually, but he'd had like psoriasis, little patches that would pop up here and there, and that he could not knock either. And he'd actually gone the medical route, had like done the medicine to no relief at all. And, like I had completely, we don't ever talk about it. So I kind of forgot about it. And then like a year into milling, I was just kind of looked at him and said like, "Hey, do you still have psoriasis?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Actually, those patches that he'd had for years had cleared up." And he was telling me like he hasn't had a flare since then. And it's been like 2 years and he hasn't had a single patch of psoriasis.
So that's amazing that your whole family experienced this. And then, of course, you were the big one.
Yeah.
But now, how does your son feel now
Yeah.
about all the bread?
Oh
Does
my,
he eat it all up now?
he, he will eat an entire loaf if I let him.
I'm super excited because I think I saw you mention it not too long ago, and I got really excited about it, that you have a cookbook coming out. You're actually working on a cookbook. So
Mhm.
tell us all the details, whatever you can share. Go ahead and tell us about it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's basically like it's my story in the book. I go into a lot of detail about, kind of where I've come from, where I'm now, and just the stage of life, raising kids and having young children and the hustle and bustle and still being able to feed your family well. And that doesn't require a ton of time. It will be on Amazon. And it's just a lot of very simple, quick, easy recipes that I've created over these last 2 years that your whole family would love. So it's been a
Using
lot.
freshly milled wheat.
Using freshly milled wheat. Yes.
Oh,
All
I'm
wheat.
I'm so excited because people ask me for cookbook recommendations. Super excited that you're coming out with one and that you're sharing your story. So that's exciting. So what do you have a title? Do you have a title for it yet?
Yes, it's called Freshly Milled. That's the name of the book.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I'm so excited. Are people able to pre-order it yet? Or how will they know when it's coming out? So where can we know when it's coming out?
On probably through my Instagram is probably the easiest way, and through my blog. But yes, there will be pre-orders, and so when I have it in my hand, I will start a pre-order. But it's soon. It is so soon.
You also do tea towels. Now you have those already. You've been doing those.
Yes.
So tell us about those because I know they're beautiful and you use them for your bread a lot.
I do. I use them for literally everything. But yeah, I have a little online shop and it's called withherhands.co is like the website. And it's just kitchen tools, like things that you would use, but are more like heirloom style things that you would use for making different breads or different baked things. But these tea towels, so for years I made these as gifts for my friends and I would give them like at Christmas or birthdays and stuff. And they're flour sack towels. And the reason, and I've made my own for years because I can use them to clean up messes and they're pretty. So like they can hang and they look really pretty. They actually absorb the liquids, if you have water. I use them for bread because they're like that thin flour sack material that like your grandmother used to make her bread. It's that same like airy, breathable fabric. So it's really good for bread rising. Started selling them after a lot of encouragement from friends and family who were like, you need to sell these, So I did it and I love it.
Tell us where people can find you. So your website, Instagram, all the places. Where can they find you?
Okay, so my Instagram is just Michal Grappe, and you'll probably see how to spell it on the interview notes. And my blog is just michalgrappe.com, and then my little store is withherhands.co.
Which I think I was looking, they can get there through your website as well. I think you have a link. Yeah. So either place. I really appreciate you coming on here, Michal. Your story is incredible. Just really showing the power behind real whole grains and overall God's food that he's given us. We'll go ahead and wrap this up. I really appreciate, Michal, you coming on. And again, I will be linking in the description box below all the links, Instagram, websites, all of those things. We're really looking forward to your cookbook coming out. In the meantime, everyone check out her recipes and her beautiful tea towels and all the things. So thank you so much, Michal. And we will cut it out here.
All right. Thank you.
So there you have it, y'all. I hope that was very inspiring. Again, the full version is available to the members of the Grains and Grit membership. Again, details are down below. But do know that Michal has wonderfully and so graciously giving all of y'all a 10% discount code. So if you shop in her store, and again, I'll have all this information in the description box below, but if you shop at her store for her beautiful tea towels, things like that, this is a 10% off code. You just need to use the code Grains and Grit. Again, all down below. As always, I hope you'll have a wonderful day and I'll see you next week. Bye.